Trillion bucks here, a trillion bucks there. Pretty soon you're talking real money, right? One of the things that's happened in this crazy world of ours is the number trillion came into our language. About 10, 15 years ago, you never heard this word. I mean, it was just too big for everything we're doing. And now we throw it around like crazy. I mean, just did a video talking about corporate debt of $10 trillion, like it's nothing. I mean, how big is this number? The problem is that a trillion is so big that it is absolutely unimaginable. I've tried really hard and it doesn't work. But we can give some ways of estimating. For example, a grain of sand weighs about a hundredth of a gram. Okay, so how much does a trillion grams or a trillion grains of sand weigh? Well, from that, it weighs about 10 billion grams, or 10 million kilograms, or 10,000 tons. A really big dump truck will hold as much as 200 tons, the really huge ones. So it takes about 50 enormous dump trucks to carry a trillion grains of sand. Okay? It just gives you some way of getting your mind around how big that is. Now, another way that I like to refer to it, I mean, basically, a trillion is what? It's a million million, right? That's the easiest way to handle it. So if we think about million, sort of the grandfather of really big numbers, what was the world like a million days ago? Well, that was 2,700 years. It was long before Jesus, long before the Roman Empire, long before the Han Dynasty, before ancient Greece, all of those kinds of things. I mean, if you had $1 million for every day since Jesus was alive, you would not have $1 trillion. Okay? And if you look at, say, our federal deficit, our total federal debt of about $25 trillion, that adds up to about $1 million for every month since humans tamed fire. It's an unimaginably large number. All right. So, how do we get our hands around this? How do we begin to think about it? Well, one thing we can do is, first of all, there are 126 million households in the United States. Okay, so we're talking about a series of really large numbers, and that's why it takes so much money to get it going. But if you look at $1 trillion, well, that's about $8,000 for every household, and it's just at the crisis. I mean, here we are in June of 2020. We've already accumulated a debt related to the crisis of about 4 trillion, and it's going to only grow. So that's what? That's about $32,000 for every household. Now, it's very easy to talk about this in terms like, somebody got that money. How much did you get? You got your check for $1,200. That's great. 32,000 for every household. Wow. Well, here's the thing. See, the size of the world that supports you and your life and everything that you do is enormous. Um, First of all, there are about 100 trillion total dollars of currency of various kinds translated into dollars printed around the world. I say about 100 trillion because it was a little over 80 trillion going into this, and I think it's growing dramatically. So let's just say it's close to 100 trillion order of magnitude. The GDP of the planet is about $80 trillion. The total amount of gold that's available in the world is about 1/10 of that. It's about 9 trillion, about 1/11th of it. So converting everything into gold, well, is really not an option. Uh, but that's how much money there is in the total planet. And it turns over about once per year. The total velocity of all the printed currency in the world turns over once a year. That's what it takes just to keep everything keeping on. So when we talk about $32,000 per household, I mean, where do they go? I mean, consider just the Food Network, for example. Farmer puts crops into the ground, they grow the crops, they harvest the crops, and then, we've got crops. We're Americans. We don't eat crops. So we feed it to animals, and we kill the animals, we slaughter them, we put them in little packages to be sent to a grocery store, or ridiculously oversized packages if they're going to Costco, and then they have to get into a truck and they go to the store and all that kind of stuff. And that's just for the food. It doesn't count all of the things that start out as microchips in Taiwan that get shipped to China for assembly, which gets shipped to South Korea to be put into a phone, which gets shipped all the way across the Pacific to North America. This is what supply chain management is all about, this process of making all of these little details come together. And it's expensive and complicated. And there is money involved at every step of the way. So when we talk about the total amount that was printed to keep everything from latching up just so far is $32,000 per household, the first thing people are going to think is, wow, why didn't I get that? Well, the answer is that everybody who feeds you and provides you with all of your different things got it. See, it's not just that a trillion is an unimaginably large number. It's that the economy itself demands that kind of money because it is unimaginably large. This is what happens in a world of tremendous specialization. It's bigger than you. I mean, the world is just not all about you. It's not that kind of party. So when we have things like $1 trillion being thrown around, people say, well, why don't I get my cut of it? Well, you know, it doesn't work that way. And it makes things very difficult for a democratic republic. Again, economics and politics are basically the same thing. What we vote on are those bread and butter issues that are important to us all. Actually, we do eat crops, bread. Anyway, that's what matters to everybody. And keeping all of that together takes trillions of dollars. I mean, how big is a trillion? Actually, I can make it sound a little bit small. The city of New York uses about 1 trillion liters of water every year. Well, okay. But that's what it takes to keep a city of 8.5 million people going, right? See, it's not just that this is an unimaginably large number. 1 million is impossible to imagine, and 1 trillion is 1 million million. The problem is that everything has gotten to that point. Everything has just become more than what you might expect. Now, granted, we have about 10 times as much currency in the world as we do total gold. We outgrew the use of gold as a form of money a long time ago. My contention is that money as we know it today as a form of debt is something that we have outgrown because remember, for all of that $100 trillion in money that was printed, all money is debt. That means there has to be a corresponding $100 trillion in debt. And all of this circulates around. We all kind of pay each other interest. And if that all crashes one day, well, then the whole process stops. I mean, it's defined dynamically. It's all about how rapidly it turns over, which is why I care about the velocity of money. But it's all about the time value of money, isn't it, right? Okay, that $1 trillion has to be worth more now than it would be tomorrow. See, the European Central Bank just this week issued about 1.3 trillion euros in new debt is available to banks that can borrow from it at a net rate of -1%. The time value of all of this money circulating all around the world in all of these different things to keep everything operating is now at -1% if you're a bank that's lucky enough to borrow. I mean, how much would you borrow at -1%? Yeah, back up those 50 dump trucks, right? How many Benjis can you shove into them? That's the problem with the world we have. The numbers are unimaginably large. How does a free people of a democratic republic keep track of this and make sense of it? It's almost impossible. It's the number of grains of sand in 50 dump trucks. Okay? It's 1 million. It's $1 million for every year since before Socrates was alive. Try and keep a handle on it. Or maybe better yet, don't think about it too much. It's a number. It's a big, big number. I'll see you.